This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. The Taliban announced a new Afghan government today. Whether that new government will be recognized by the international community is still a toss-up, but the announcement comes after the group seized control of the last Afghanistan province. The US withdrew troops a week ago, marking an end to America's 20-year war in the country. As that deadline approached, thousands of people swarmed the Kabul airport, hoping to flee from the Taliban and worried about what the country might look like under Taliban rule. While many were able to get out with the help of countries around the world, others were not so lucky. And right now, options to leave are pretty slim because the Kabul airport isn't running international flights. We've covered story after story of Afghans who stayed and who are in hiding because they're afraid of being on the Taliban's so-called blacklist. The Taliban has promised things will be different for Afghans this time around, but that is yet to be seen, especially with how the group treats the country's journalists. Freedom of press was just getting established in the country, and now that progress is being undone. It's a transition that could be visibly seen playing out on the TV stations there. As the Taliban gained more power, women who are anchors or reporters were taken off air and told to stay home or forced out of their jobs. Journalists have been arrested and beaten for simply covering the day's events, while others are facing death threats. Newsy's Ben Shamiso talked to two prominent broadcast journalists about what they are allowed to cover and what it's like trying to report the facts or the truth under this new rule.
My neighbors told to the Taliban group that he has gone to outside of the country. But if they hear my sound, they will know that I'm here.
Yeah, because you are a famous TV anchor, so a lot of people know your voice.
Yes.
Newsy exclusively spoke with two prominent Afghan TV reporters in hiding.
I have not gone home for 2 weeks, and I have not seen my wife and my children.
They dedicated their careers to fighting for democracy and calling out the Taliban. Now they say they are on the Islamist group's blacklist.
If they find us, and they will be arrested, and maybe they kill us.
We are blurring their faces, distorting their voices, and calling them Ali and AJ to keep them safe. As the Taliban approached Kabul, they phoned Ali and AJ multiple times demanding they stop their negative coverage of the group. If not, they and their children would soon be killed.
They came to our homes and they destroy our things they find.
Ali and AJ fled as soon as Taliban fighters entered the city. Hours later, the Taliban ransacked their houses. These photos taken by neighbors, themselves pressured to reveal the journalists' hiding place.
After 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, I'm changing my location.
Ali and AJ say a fellow journalist was recently murdered by the Taliban. The group also detained several reporters covering a demonstration in Kabul on Tuesday.
No media, no television, no radio, and no newspaper cannot make any report against them.
Ali and AJ don't believe for a second the Taliban's promise of amnesty for them and other American allies.
If you forgive, why you're searching the house? Why you're seeking the people?
Many Afghan journalists working for international news organizations have managed to get out of Afghanistan. But like others working for local news operations, Ali and AJ still hope to escape, though the Taliban now control all exit routes.
We are growing our beard, we are changing our face.
They are working with American attorneys to obtain humanitarian paroles, a status that allows foreigners to enter the US under exceptional circumstances.
Something that is just really striking to me is just how relatable my clients are and how much in common we have.
Immigration attorney Sandra Fist is working pro bono on the reporter's case. She's been deeply impressed by their journalistic passion and integrity.
These are people who are inspired, who followed the American lead in Afghanistan and said, we will meet you in this mission to create a government, create a democracy where we have religious freedom, where we have women's rights. These people are awesome, and they have so much to offer the world wherever they may end up.
For now, Ali and AJ want the world to know what's really happening in their country.
You are our voice. We want you to show this dangerous situation in Afghanistan to all the country.
Ben Chamisso, Newsy.
Here to talk to us a bit more about that story and journalists and journalism in Afghanistan is Newsy's Ben Chamisso. Ben, there are reports that journalists are being detained in Afghanistan. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I actually was chatting on Facebook Messenger with one of those journalists who was detained and assaulted by the Taliban for a couple hours before they released him. He told me they hit him in the head. He said that they stole his notes and they told him that he was a traitor because he was spreading propaganda and discrediting the Taliban in the eyes of the West. I also want to note that they released him to his house after a couple hours, so they know where he lives at the moment, which of course is dangerous for him. And he sent me a video of the moment right before they arrested him, when the Taliban started firing into the crowd or away from the crowd to break up the protests.
If I could take a step back here, one of the things that was noted about the Taliban taking over Afghanistan is what this would do to journalism in the country. There had been a lot of progress made toward a free press. What's expected now for journalists and journalism in the country?
Well, as I have reported on, the future is unfortunately pretty bleak. Reports of violence against journalists, death threats against journalists. AJ and Ali told me from colleagues of them that the Taliban have been to all these different TV stations and asking people not to report anything negative against them, otherwise the station would be closed down. We've seen images of the Taliban standing behind a TV anchor with their weapons in hand to intimidate the type of reporting that the station would do. And finally, they also told me apparently there is one Taliban person, one Taliban leader who is in control, who really has a say in all the reports that get disseminated across the TV stations, across the radio, across newspapers. And so the journalists told me the only way to really know what's happening in Afghanistan at the moment is through social media and through foreign media.
Yeah, a lot of developments there in Afghanistan. Newsy's Ben Chamisso, thanks so much. There are humanitarian crises happening not just in Afghanistan, but also Haiti, after the country experienced a 7.2 magnitude earthquake last month. When you're back, we'll tell you how the U.S. is helping refugees from those countries.